We're working on a Williams Flash today. This is a typical Williams System 6 game. I had to do all the standard repairs to this. That is, actually this is a System 4 CPU board, but it had some battery corrosion and it used the original ROMs that were smaller ROMs than what I have in there now. I've replaced them with EEPROMs, and the reason why I do that is I use 2716 EEPROMs, and then I don't have to use these 3 ROMs, which means I only have to replace these 3 sockets, because this game originally used the crappy Scambi style socket. So I put new sockets in there. I think I might have had to put a new socket here, and maybe a new 40 pin there. Also used a 2032 style coin battery. I like those as replacement batteries on these games. Another thing I did is I put a new interconnector in, the new female side of the 40 pin interconnector, and also resoldered all the pins on the male connectors on both the driver and the CPU board on the back side of these. So after doing all that work, game boots up successfully. It's in full track mode. Everything seems to be working very nicely. Problem is, if I go and start a game, hear that noise, that boom, that means the game is tilted. Now that means the game is tilted before I've done anything. The ball is shot to the shooter lane, but I haven't been able to play anything. The flippers are dead, and nothing is working, just tilts. So I'm getting nowhere fast here. It's just tilting. So we get a couple tilt warnings here, and now it's probably going to advance to ball 3, I reckon. Well, it's going to let me go one more time, and it'll go to ball 3. But again, you just hear that nasty tilt. So the game is auto tilting, and we need to figure out why. If we open the coin door, have the toggle switch towards me and press the diagnostic button, and then flip the switch up, press it again, I'll go into diagnostics. Right now it is doing the display test. Press it again, and it's doing the lamp test. Press it again, it's going to be the solenoids, but the test I really care about is this one. And now watch all the switch numbers that are being presented here. These are all switches that it thinks are closed. Now it went kind of fast. You only get one shot, and then it just hangs out on one switch. But you'll notice that I don't have any switches closed on the playfield. That is, all the drop targets are up. The ball's in the shooter lane, so the out hole isn't closed. No switches should be closed. But when I went into that switch test, it repeated through a bunch of switch numbers, telling me that they were all closed. So what does this mean, and what are those switches? Well, if we had a picture of the game manual, we could look at and see what the switches are, but what I did is I wrote them down as they scrolled past quickly. They were switch 2, 10, 18, 26, and 34, and 42. All these ones I have circled here. So what I've done is I've made an 8x8 matrix here of rows and columns, 8 rows, 8 columns, and this represents the switch matrix in the game. There's 8 rows and 8 columns. Any intersection of any particular row or column is a particular switch. So if you notice, all these switches are all in the same row. Okay? Now they didn't show me switch 50 or 58 just because this game doesn't use switch 50 or 58, but it showed me all the switches in row 2. So this leads me to believe that there is a switch matrix problem in row 2. So here's a schematic for the driver board. If we look over here, it says switch inputs 1 through 8. The inputs are the rows, opposed to down here the switch matrix drives, those are the columns. So I'm interested in the rows, and you see they all go through these 4049 chips, which are IC15 and IC16 on the driver board. So I suspect we have a problem on one of those, and if we look at drive 2, which would be row 2, that I believe is right here, connector J3 pin 8, and it goes through IC15, which is a 4049. So we need to look at that chip on the board. Now IC15, if we look over here on the layout, is this bottom chip right here. So these two are the rows, and these two chips are the columns, and then these are the connectors that are responsible for those, and then you've also got a PIA that reads those inputs. So here we can see we had switch rows, switch columns on our little piece of paper, and we're going to replace IC15 because I suspect that one is our culprit. Here's a picture of the driver board, and again, these are my connectors for the switches, the rows and the columns, and then these two chips here are for the rows, these two for the columns, and then the PIA that reads them. This is the switch that I suspect is bad. So what I'm going to do, it's already socketed on this game, conveniently. I'm going to just put in a new 4049 CMOS chip and see if this fixes our phantom tilt problem. So I have our new chip installed. I turn the game on. Again, I'm going to use the diagnostic switches and put it into test mode. There's our displays. There's our lamps, there's our solenoids, and now I'm going to press it one more time to get to the switches. And there's our switches. Now notice I have nothing there. It's not showing me any switches as closed, which is as it should be. I shouldn't have any switches closed since I have the ball in the shooter lane and all the drop targets are up. No switches should be closed. That's how the game should work. So looks like replacing that chip fixed the problem. So I'll turn it off and turn it back on. We'll start a game. And notice I do not have the phantom tilt anymore, and I can play the game. Just shut that thing off, but you can see that that has fixed our switch matrix problem.